Do you want to get a comfort break on before you start the motions? Do you want to get
A comfort break?
It's up to you.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Members, does anybody want a comfort break so we can take 10 minutes and then come back? Okay. Okay.
It's always a good point to stop before we get fast back in.
And
Just finish it. Just.
all right, okay. Okay, moving on to motions now, and can I call Councillor Jason Barr?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll take the motion as read, please.
Seconder? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, it's a pity that we have to bring a motion like this to Council, but we feel that there is no other option due to the current state and due to the recent correspondence not been acted upon from various departments who are not taking responsibility. Across the Strabane district, in particular, housing estates are in a very unwelcome state due to weeds and broken footpaths. Listafin Park in particular, Mayor, and Strabane is like an estate that was abandoned years ago. It's in a current state where no one that I've spoke to from Listafin are proud to be living there in the current state that it's in. I know they got the road resurfaced and their footpaths resurfaced, but their alleyways and paths that lead to their houses are in an awful state. And this is something that needs addressed. And this is why we're asking the Minister of Communities to release more funding to the Housing Executive so that they can maintain and keep their estates up to a standard that the residents rightly so deserve. And this also goes out to the Minister of DFI, who also has a responsibility for our roads and streets, making sure that they're safe and welcoming for all who use them. I noted very recently also that the Mark Patterson show was chatting about at the Tanny, so this is something also that needs addressed. Also, with the rise of hogweed and around the Strabane district, I know Councillor Raymond Barr had got a call in the last couple of weeks regarding hogweed just off the Strabane Bridge, which was standing at nearly 11 foot tall. And thankfully that issue has now been addressed, but DFI and Council need to be working together to make sure that this issue has been kept on top of. Finally, just regarding the weeds in around the town centre and Strabane, and also town centres across all our villages in the Old Strabane district, like Castlederg, Douglas Bridge, Victoria Bridge, Plum Bridge, areas like those that have been neglected and not given the attention that they need to address the weeds issue. Like hundreds of pounds are spent every year to come in and power wash Strabane. We need to be banging on the Minister's door to get the Strabane public realm signed off and to make Strabane somewhere that we can all be proud to live off and somewhere that can be welcoming to those visitors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. I would fully concur with everything Councillor Jason Barr has just said. The housing estates in Strabane, especially Listafin, are in a shocking state. And Jason's mentioned the tinnies, he's mentioned the hogweed. The hogweed, it's out of control. And if it's allowed to continue unchecked, it's going to have disastrous consequences from a public health perspective.
Councillor Raymond, would you please speak closer to the mic? Thank you.
In contrast, in 2023, the city's streetscape staff were congratulated on being awarded the best kept city large town category in the TransLink Ulster and Bloom competition. This year again, the city won the best city award, and then last week scooped the award for best kept large urban centre. With yourself, Mayor, congratulating our grounds maintenance and street cleaning teams on the work they do every day, tending the flare displays, making sure our public facilities are clean and fit for purpose. The areas look amazing. And that's not a criticism of you, Mayor, that's all good. It's good to see. It's good to see the city get these awards, but Strabane's still looking amazing. No matter what way we look at this, there's no equity here. People in Strabane, and I'm sure in the other areas, they read about the city winning all these awards. They come to the city and they see for themselves why the city has won these awards, and they wonder why Strabane and the other rural areas are not getting the same attention. I'm hearing it every day, and quite simply, it's not good enough. It's not acceptable, and it won't be accepted. We're fed up with the poor relations in this council. There's a lack of equity at all levels too, but that's an argument for another day. So this is something that needs addressed. and these addressed soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the proposers, Jason and Raymond Barr. On behalf of the SDLP, we support the spirit of this motion, but our honest assessment is that the issues described in the motion about the state of the footpaths in Strabane, the state of the roads in Strabane, are not issues confined solely to Strabane and the surrounding areas. These issues are widespread right across the city and district. Every DEA within this city and district experiences these issues. There are potholes across roads right across the city and district. Footpaths need renewed right across the city and district. Moss is widespread across the city and district, as are weeds. So whilst we recognise that this issue exists in Strabane, it exists simply everywhere. Our view is that there's not enough budget within DFI to address these issues. There's not enough focus to address these issues. So we think it's unacceptable. I think everybody is being let down. I don't think anybody is happy. You know, I was in Wesley Street yesterday afternoon, and it's like a jungle up there with the weeds along the footpaths. So whilst we support the sentiment of the motion, we do have an amendment which asks for all the actions contained within the motion to be looked at on a council-wide basis, not solely Strabane and the surrounding areas. But thank you to the proposers.
Do you have a seconder for that? Okay, thank you. I'll bring in Alderman Jose. Oh, hold on a minute. Sorry, Alderman Jose, just give us a few minutes for the amendment to go up.
Sorry?
For the amendment to go up, just give us 1 minute, and then I'll come
Okay.
back to you. All right. Okay, members, that's the amendment, and Councillor Jose, I'll bring you in. You want to speak to the amendment and the motion? Or you okay? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I find the amendment interesting because prior to that amendment, you would have found 12 councillors who now represent out of 40 the former Strabane District Councillor in total agreement with the motion, because it's something that I'm getting day and daily. It's interesting that the amendment comes from the SDLP, who no longer have a representative in the Strabane district area. However, we'll go forward as it is. The motion refers to three elements, namely communities, i.e. the housing executive, I presume, DFI road service, and indeed our own council. And there are areas of responsibility that are being abandoned almost by each of those bodies. If Conor were still here, he would be able to refer to emails that he's had from myself with regard to power washing, a power washing scheme which I managed to persuade council to bring in for the three major settlements in the Derg electoral area. Cyan Mills, Castledergan, Newton Stewart, a power washing scheme that we're still waiting on. The reply that I got as to why the scheme hadn't actually initiated yet is because DFI Road Service have to do their weed spraying before they undertake the power washing, which is logical enough. I've actually just received an email today to say that at this moment in time, there's no indication when DFI will be doing the weed spraying in our area. Now, if you look around other areas and compare what's going on, last year, I remember coming out of the Foyle Street car park and meeting the guy who was power washing along there. And I said, how often do you do this? He says, it's just steady around the city. You know, all we're looking for is an equity, and that equity in my own area of the former Strabane District Council area was power washing once a year to help clean up our streets. And they are an absolute disgrace. They're a disgrace to the DFI. They're a disgrace to this council. And it's a matter that has to be addressed, and I fully support the motion as stands. As stands, because there is an inequality that has to be recognised by the other councillors other than the 12 who represent the former Strabane District Council area. There is an unequal treatment of our part of the District Council area compared to particularly the city. So thank you to Jason and Raymond for bringing the motion, which I totally accept. I wouldn't support the amendment, but if it is eventually supported by this council, I will then support the full motion. But as for the amendment, I wouldn't support it at this point in time, because I think the motion is the intention of bringing focus on an area of council where there is that lack of attention. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wants to speak on the amendment first? Okay, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't planning on speaking on this. The motion was proposed, I presume, to address an issue which the two councillors have recognised, and we have no issue with that. But Alderman Hussey has said that this is to address the issues in Strabane. I could not tell you, from being elected in this chamber since 2014, how many times someone has accidentally said that I represent the city, or this city should do that. And Alderman Hussey's jumping up and down, going on, up city and district, don't forget the district, you can't forget the district, but he's quite happy to forget the city when it suits the district. I think that's wrong. This is to try and address the issues across this city and district, because I know Alderman Hussey may not know his way around the city very well, but the footpaths here are growing, the weeds growing out of them too, you know. And we are dealing with the same issues here in Derry that are proposed in this motion in Strabane. So why would you want to split it and get DFI or whoever the responsible person may be only to address one side of this council district? Surely it's better to come in, look at the entire piece as a whole and get them to fix the whole lot, rather than just fixing the Strabane end, or as Alderman Hussey probably would prefer, the Castlederg side of it. That's wrong. It's the wrong approach in our view. And the amendment stands because we want to see the entire district addressed, not just one part of it. And I genuinely hope that this council can see the sense in that approach and back the motion as is agreed, or as is proposed, sorry. Thank you.
Anybody else who wants to speak on the amendment? Okay, obviously, okay, come back.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to come on the, sorry.
Can I come back to you shortly? Yeah. Councillor Bogg, do you want to speak on the amendment?
Mayor, and I am divided on it because I haven't listened to both arguments, and obviously people will know I'm a Strabane-based councillor. And I do recognise that there is some, well, I don't recognise, it slaps me in the face every day, there is some inequity between the treatment in what we'll call the rural DAs or the Strabane Legacy Council and the city or the urban DAs within the city. And I don't think that anybody can argue to that fact. And anybody that is pulling faces or squirming about it, I would invite you to come and take a walk around Castledairg or Strabane Town, and you will see it. And perhaps that is from a council perspective. And on a different note, the motion talks about DFA and the housing executive, which isn't going to just be on a Strabane Town element, because I recognise I be out and about with the team who represent the city and the estates that fall into that. And I do see that there are similar issues in terms of DFA and the housing executive in those estates. And that's where I'm conflicting myself and between, yes, there maybe is an inequity in council services and the level of service that is provided to Strabane Town, Castledairg and so on, versus that against the fact that, yes, the housing executive and DFA could be doing more right across the board. And I think if you talk to somebody in Banbridge or somebody in Belfast, they would say exactly the same. This isn't an issue that is specific to our council area. I would say this isn't an issue that is specific to a town or a city. I would say anybody that is out in their garden themselves at home, with the weather and the climate at the minute, it rains one day, it's sunny the next. It is the perfect storm for weeds to be growing up here, there and everywhere. So I think it is a difficult issue to combat in the first instance. And also in the remarks, and I know I was speaking to the amendment, but in terms of the whole motion, Mayor, I think that the staff and those organisations and those agencies and council have to be commended as well, because I know, and from speaking to our team before coming on today, when certain areas are raised with departments and with council, I know I've had probably good success, and I take on board.
So you need to sum up.
Yeah, I take on board what the proposers are saying about specific estates in Strabane. I'm contacted about them as well. But DFA, and I'll finish on this, Mayor, DFA, I contacted them 2 weeks ago in relation to the Ballycoman in particular, and I was back in that area 2 days ago, and the spraying between contacting them and 2 days ago, there is a massive difference already by the weeds dying down. So I do think it's the time of the year for it. So that's just, I'll leave it at that, Mayor, but it's just to make the points around the three issues.
Thank you. Alderman Morris.
Thank you, Mayor. And we totally agree with the amendments. So I'll speak on both, or do you want me to just, yeah.
Go ahead with both.
Yeah. So basically, I've listened to the arguments today, and I have to agree, the whole district basically could do with weeding and help with anything in regards to it. But we have an issue, certainly in the water side, where we have been out canvassing. Some of our estates is in really, really poor shape. There was weeds like just meeting people at gates, and it's just really unwelcoming for people, to come into any of the estates within, our city and district. And I appreciate that people think they're a disparity, but I can assure you, when I'm out and about, basically we see the neglect and basically the lack of, funding into these departments in order to address the issues. We have a real health and safety issue in regards to this. We have like junctions which is overgrown, so there's sightline issues in regards to manoeuvring cars in and out of junctions. We see like the housing executive and back lanes, it's just people can't access back lanes because they're just overrun with weeds. But we also have to address the issue that we have within our own council. We need to be basically making sure we're cleaning our own doorstep before we kind of get on the back of other departments. We have raised consistently about grass and weeds, but we have a real issue, and certainly in the graveyards within the water side, where, this is a burial of loved ones, and grass and weeds and potholes is a serious issue, and it's one that's raised relentlessly. And when we raise it, we're basically told from officers that they don't have the staff, but this was raised last year, do you know what I mean? And there's been no like resolution to the issues that we raised last year, and so we're repeatedly raising
Sum
them.
up now.
Yeah, but we're happy to support the motion and the amendment, and hopefully our own council will take that on board as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, just want to commend Councillor Barr and Barr for bringing this in. And it is, who are sitting either side of me, and it is very disappointing. You know, about in terms of the state of our housing estates and roads, in terms of weeds and things being overgrown. So I fully support the motion. I think, look, Councillor Farrell is right to point out that this is a citywide issue. But I also think that, you know, I'm going to abstain on the actual amendment because I think it takes away a bit from the focus that the councillors are trying to bring to Strabane and to some of the more rural areas. And I think we have to be, as councillors in the big city, very sensitive to that. We have other task forces that you could say are district-wide issues. For example, we have a Glenone task force that is about issues in Glenone, but you could actually say that that is the issues that are coming up there come up in estates right across the district. But the fact that that task force is focused on Glenone is actually allowing a focus on it, and it's allowing us to get something done. In my opinion, if that had been district-wide, I think we'd be still chasing our tails. The same is true of the fountain, where we're trying to look at how to bring, you know, areas of the fountain out of dereliction and back into use. That is something that could be applied right across the district to many areas, including a lot of rural areas. But the focus on the fountain, I believe, will actually focus minds on it. So I'm for a citywide approach, but I think that the councillors have brought this in today within mind, trying to get something done immediately in Strabane and the surrounding areas. So I fully support that and the rationale behind it.
Councillor Barr, is that on the amendment?
You, Mayor, and just Councillor Harkin just took the words right out of my mouth. So I won't be supporting the amendment due to the fact that I wanted both. Me and Councillor Rimbar want this to remain as a Strabane district-wide issue rather than at the city issue, because we do feel that the disparity there, and the disparity has seen a lot more within that. And I know that when Councillor Raymond Barr brought a motion back in the last mandate to bring councillors from the city down to Strabane to see some of the disparity that exists, I believe maybe that should happen again. And hopefully more of the city councillors will attend this time. So on that basis, Mayor, I will not be supporting the amendment, as I want this to remain solely as a Strabane district issue. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
No, just for absolute clarity, and on Councillor Jason Barr's final point, I was at the site visit, the Strabane Town and Castle Derg, where it was specifically focused on issues around the cleanliness of the town centres and village centres. So there was, and it was very clear that there's a specific issue in that part of our district. And whilst we all recognise that the issues that have been highlighted here are experienced right across our city and district, they're experienced within our neighbourhoods, within communities, everywhere. And at this time of year, when we're knocking doors, it's one of the most common issues that's been raised with this as canvassers. But the motion that was brought here today is almost to reiterate the point that despite the focus that Councillor Raymond Barr brought in the past, the issues are still there. And if we're going to address the issues, and if we're serious talk around regional disparity, we need to take issues of disparity within our own district serious as well. So on that basis, we're not supporting the amendment that's in front of us. And I'm saying that as a proud urban councillor, but I do believe that taking the focus away from the Strabane district dilutes the motion in a sense where we feel that we could no longer support it. So we won't be supporting the amendment. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, so we do have opposing views. So can we take a vote for the amendment first? So it's a show of hands, those who are voting against. You want to come back?
I just want to speak before we take a vote, Mayor, please. On the amendment.
On the amendment?
Yeah.
Right, okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I can't support the amendment. If we look at the original motion, the last paragraph reads, "This council will also commit to maintaining their own lands and property to make it," and this is the important, but "a more welcoming to those who live within and visit the Strabane and surrounding areas." I agree 100% with what Alderman Hussey said, and pleased at Councillor Jackson's comments and Councillor Harkins. I think when we look at this, the bigger picture's being missed here. The point is there's a clear disparity when it comes to street furniture, floral displays, etc. in Strabane. It's having a negative effect on townspeople. It's having a negative effect on businesses, and it's having a negative effect on visitors to the area. You know, it would take very, very little in comparison to what it takes to clean up Strabane, Castlereagh, Dunamana, in comparison to what it takes to make the city presentable. And I think that's the point that's being missed. There's a clear disparity here, and I would expect a wee bit of empathy from the city councillors. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, you want to come in for the amendment?
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
Just very quickly, Mayor. Well, this is a passion of mine. Anybody that knows me, you know how our city looks is a great passion of mine. I do appreciate and understand the sentiments that it's directed towards Strabane. I think by focusing on certain areas, more can be achieved. And by opening this up, we are essentially diluting and you can see nothing being achieved. Whereas I know in my areas, which parts are owned by DFI, which parts are owned by council, which are the responsibility of housing executive, and more can be achieved that way. So we open things up and sometimes you achieve absolutely nothing. So while it really annoys me that I have to vote against the amendment, I will be, but my sentiment is that yes, everywhere should get the same attention, and equally, unfortunately, that is not happening. And the only way to do that is to address specific areas at certain times. There's no reason why we can't do this for individual constituencies as opposed to just city, district, and putting one against the other. While I can see how that can be opposing, I think the focus should be on a specific area at a specific time, and therefore you've more chance of success and things being achieved. Thank you.
I think everybody has spoken now on the amendment. So with a show of hands, those who are voting against the amendment.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Maybe it's a naive question. Why are we doing it by show of hands and not actually recording the vote? Do you know, so that people knows what way we voted? I'm just asking the question. I don't have an issue with it, but I'm just asking why we're all of a sudden doing it this way.
No, so Alder McMorris, the position prior to COVID and remote meetings and the position that's established within standing orders is that a show of hands was the way that votes were taken, unless prior to the vote being called, a member specifically requested a recorded vote. Once we move to online meetings and purely online meetings or hybrid meetings, obviously a show of hands doesn't work because we can't see everybody. But so we had to go through the names regardless of whether or not it was a recorded vote. But now at the moment, with everybody being back in the chamber, the normal standing orders apply. So unless a member specifically requests a recorded vote in advance of the vote being taken, then the matter can just be dealt with by way of show of hands.
That's a good clarification there, Philip. Thank you very much.
And that shows normality is back. Thank you. Okay, next, show of hands, those who are voting for the amendment. Any abstentions? Okay, 2 abstentions.
21 against, 11 for, 1 abstention, so the amendment.
Okay, so we have 21 against, 11 for, and 2 abstentions. Yeah, 2 abstentions and the amendment falls. So back to the substantial motion. Do you want to sum up?
Just thanks to everyone who took part in the debate, and I'm glad to see that this motion will be supported and going through as it stands. And I do understand, yes, that this does exist right across the country and right across the country, but I'm glad that this motion has stayed and is focused on the Strabane and the old Strabane district, where to me this issue arises a lot more and is definitely in more need to be addressed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I haven't had any dissenting voices, but can I just clarify, are there any dissenting voices or is the motion unanimous? Okay, thank you very much, members. Moving on to Alderman Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I take the proposal as read, and I so propose if I can get a seconder?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Councillor Alderman Jose, please.
Starting on. Mayor,
Go ahead, go ahead.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members. I'm confident that every single person in this chamber has used the principles that are being suggested in the piloting of communication boards in my motion. In all early years, we will have had the reading book or cards with pictures and a word: cow, dog, swing, cat, house, whatever. The simplest ideas are often the best, and the principle behind the use of communication boards is simple and effective. The Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists would suggest that 10% of children and young people live with a long-term speech, language, or communication need, and this is a figure that is increasing. The aim of this motion is to improve communication access for all of our citizens, but particularly for our young folk. Only this year, Department of Health in England have said, and it applies here as well, I'm certain, have said that across the range of early years services, we are witnessing a significant increase in the frequency and complexity of speech, language, and communication needs of children in our community. Early years providers and community paediatricians are seeing a 90% increase in the numbers of children with speech, language, and communication needs. 90% increase in referrals to autism assessment clinics, 70% increase in referrals to child development clinics. The evidence is that those with speech, language, or communication needs are placed at a significant risk of failing to achieve their potential. Poor outcomes for those with speech, language, or communication needs lead to a higher risk of unemployment, mental health issues, and even risk of antisocial or criminal behaviour. Lack of speech, language, or communication skills isolates a significant number of our citizens, and statistics show that worsening outcomes are felt even more starkly for those living in socially deprived areas, and as such, we are failing such young folk. The use of communication boards will increase accessibility and inclusivity for those impacted with speech, language, and communication needs. Communication boards are used to help share messages with others, are for everyone to use, but especially assist children and adults who can understand more than they are able to vocalize, including those on the autistic spectrum with Down syndrome, etc. Communication boards can be used to assist our citizens to express themselves and, more importantly, to interact with others. To have pictures, symbols, words can indeed also include Braille. The idea is nothing new, rather it's an extension of what we already do. Toilet signage, disabled parking areas, road signage, all use symbolism.
Alderman Jose, you need to sum
To
up.
conclude, let Derry City and Strabane District Council be part of the village that it takes to raise all of our children.
Thank you. Alderman Middleton.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. The DUP have a strong focus on providing fun, interactive and inclusive play opportunities for all our children and young people, district and countrywide. As a party, we have been raising play issues at every elected and community level. We, as a councillor group, have raised the need for better play provision as well as movement in areas such as Cumberclawdy, Killaloe, Falconview and Rossdowney, to name but a few, where we have missing, sometimes not replaced play equipment or no play equipment at all. But to focus on the motion at hand, we as a party are really encouraged that we have the opportunity to support the inclusion of communication boards, a vital communicative tool for neurodivergent children, children with additional needs, those with speech and language needs, those with communication needs, and children who find comfort in preparing for play in a knowledgeable, calm and organised manner. Whilst I am personally very happy to see this brought on as a pilot, I think it goes without saying that it is imperative that we as a council carry out a scoping exercise to seek funding and therefore plans to introduce communication boards district-wide. Can I also suggest that, as well as consulting with the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, which is essential, we should prioritise consulting with children, young people and their parents or caregivers who use augmentative and alternative communication to ensure an ease of user friendliness and a focused experience for our youngest residents as well as their families. Thank you very much.
Can I ask, is that an amendment to the motion? All right, just a comment. Okay, thank you. Goes to Councillor McHugh.
And I thank the Alderman for tabling the motion. And as I've said, I'm happy to second it. What we have in Castle Derg at the Derg Castle Park, whenever it's completed, it will be an all-ability destination playground with a variety of play equipment to ensure play is accessible to children with multiple disabilities, and that includes those with sensory deprivation issues. So if the installation of these communication boards not only enhances the accessibility for these children, but enhances their experience, and I think it's a positive development. And if it's then rolled out throughout the city and district, and it'll benefit children in those categories, as I say, throughout the whole district. So me and Sinn Féin are happy to support it.
Thank you. And Councillor Mooney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Alderman Hussey for bringing this motion. I think it's one of those motions that's extremely practical and of practical benefit to residents of the whole community in the whole city and district. Obviously, young kids who experience any multifactorial issues in relation to speech and language and all those developmental issues that could occur in childhood could really benefit from the use of communication boards. In fact, I had an opportunity last night looking through the literature on the Royal College's website and different other issues, and it really does open up a new vista for young kids who have these problems, who have these issues that they struggle to communicate and to identify. And obviously, if these communication boards can release that opportunity for them, then all the best and more power to it. And obviously, the SDLP would quite happily support this as the test issue for our city and district. Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank Councillor Hussey. I think this is an absolutely excellent idea. We have been discussing our play parks recently, and there have been a lot of discussions and chats with people, especially in my own DEA, about Hazelbank. I find that what we're doing is we're actually still going down that traditional route of play parks in their design and functionality, and we're not bringing in modern needs of modern children and the diversity that's out there now. For example, when Brook Park was being redeveloped there a number of years ago, we had to retrospectively put in a wheelchair swing, and we shouldn't be doing that retrospectively. We should be making all these considerations beforehand. That's why it's such an excellent idea. And in my own DEA, we've got a design there for the Ringford Road, and it doesn't include a kickabout pitch, and that's one of the key elements for children these days, to be able to run freely, play ball, etc. And I was delighted to see actually young people, come to the consultation and put their views on there. So excellent idea. I really hope it gets full support, and if we could roll that out, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, members, I haven't really had any dissenting voices, but I'll let you sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to colleagues in the chamber for what I'm detecting as unanimous support. Can I also say thanks to the young lady who's a speech and language therapist in Castlederrick who brought this to my attention. I met with her and we talked over the idea, and her name is Sarah Sproul. So thanks to Sarah who brought the issue to my attention. And can I also pay thanks to Ruth Sedgwick of the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, who assisted me in my research into bringing the motion to Council. And I look forward to seeing the first communication board being in Castlederrick, but also to the eventual spread of those to our other facilities for the benefit of those who will benefit from this, those with speech, language and communication needs in our society. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just to clarify, no dissenting voices and the motion is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Moving on to Councillor Dini to move, please.
Mayor, I'll just take the motion as read, if that's okay. So just to say,
Do you have a second?
oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. We fully welcome the announcement by the Education Minister of £25 million to support children, parents and providers with early years education and childcare. Finance Minister Keith Archibald has also prioritised an affordable childcare strategy within the executive. Sinn Féin are committed to affordable and accessible childcare, and this has been a key priority of ours within the Assembly. However, we need every department within the executive to work together to deliver a high-quality childcare strategy to help support children, workers and families. As a party and personally as a mother, we recognise the frustration and financial strain placed upon parents by the cost of childcare. Families right now are struggling and working to pay a childcare bill at the end of every month. It is creating a barrier for many parents to work or advance their careers. But if we get childcare right, which we can build our economy and allow workers and families not to be disadvantaged within their careers due to childcare costs. We must also support our childcare providers who are struggling to keep the doors open due to the rising cost of doing business. These providers are the backbone of our childcare system and need supported. More needs to be done to cut the cost of childcare and make it more affordable. Developing an ambitious strategy to deliver this is essential, and this funding is the first step towards achieving our goal. However, it does require the cross-departmental funding. Families, workers and providers cannot wait any longer for this strategy. We can work together to transform childcare in a way that values childcare workers and delivers the change that families deserve. Mayor.
Thank you and well done for finishing on time. Can I bring in Alderman Cook, please?
Thanks, Mayor, for letting me in, and thanks to Councillor Dini for bringing this motion forward. Childcare is becoming more and more unaffordable and is now currently averaging around £10,000 per year per child. It is very welcome news of the £25 million package that our Education Minister announced back in May. This investment clearly demonstrates that despite an extremely challenging budget position, the Executive seems committed to making support for young children, their families and the services that they rely on a top priority. I really hope that this is the case and we can all work together and find a way to build on those important steps towards a full early learning and childcare strategy, so the DEP fully supports this motion. Thank you.
Thank you and well done too. Councillor McDade, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Dini for bringing the motion. We in the SLP are more than happy to support it. I'm a mommy of 3 young children, so I pay a significant amount in childcare costs, so I can confirm that it is crippling. Our childcare costs are significantly more than our mortgage, but we pay it because we trust somebody to look after our children, who are the most precious things in our life. So I can say from both sides, we need help for the providers because the cost of living is going up and up. So how can they be expected to provide the service with no help? We need help for the parents or the carers who are paying for it, because how are we expected to work and look after our children and pay for our children? So yes, the SLP will continue to demand for a childcare strategy, but it has to have tangible outcomes attached to it that we can make sure are actually happening. We need to make sure that they are practical and they will provide practical support to the providers, and that they'll provide economical support for the parents and the carers. But I think, and most importantly, we need to make sure the children are at the centre of it, because it needs to be focused on child welfare and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussain.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Denny. Members will recall the motion back in April that I brought calling for cross-departmental approach to this whole issue, and I welcome this motion, which is backing that up. Although the mention is made of the Education Minister, there are other departments who need to be contributing, and that's what this motion recognises, and that the guidance has to come from the executive on a strategy, a cross-department strategy to enable proper childcare and all involved in that to be supported. And thank you for bringing the motion.
Thank you very much. So members, no dissent. Oh, okay. Come on in.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to speak in favour or in support of Councillor Deeney's motion, I think it's a step forward that's obviously been welcomed by many, many parents and childcare providers, that there is now funding of 25 million towards childcare costs. And you can see that a lot of people are relieved that this is happening. And I want to commend all the campaigners that have done a lot of work. They've put feet on the street. There's been a lot of papers written, a lot of lobbying done. And, this is the achievement of that. I don't see that this is the end. I think that this is a beginning, and we've had to wait very, very long for this. And I know that that's included in the motion, but I think we need to go further. 22 and a half hours is going to be of funded preschool childcare costs is going to be welcomed by a lot of families across the entirety of the north. But we're still not reaching the level of, support that exists across the water. So I think that this is a start, and it shows that campaigning has paid off. And I think we need to, make sure that it can go further now.
Thank you. Okay. No dissenting voices. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll bring you in to sum up.
Carmel, good Mayor. And as sort of it's been said there, we as a council have been calling on the executive to support, to support children and childcare providers. And we've had several motions from Councillor McDade, from Alderman Hussey. So it's just only right that we recognise that something's been done. As Councillor Harkin has said there, it's not the end, it's only the start. So it was just to acknowledge that. But Carmel, good.
Thank you. So I take it that is unanimous. Well done. Okay, next is Councillor McGidney, please, to move.
Mayor, and I'll take the motion as read also. Just get it on the screen there.
Second up?
I get a seconder.
Okay, Boggs, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Everyone in this chamber and outside of it are all too aware of the scale of the housing crisis in this island. That's why we need the Minister for Communities to publish and implement the housing supply strategy. This strategy has already been consulted on, and my party colleague Ciara Ferguson MLA has called repeatedly on the Minister to publish and, more importantly, to implement the housing supply strategy. I believe that a call from this council as an area that's particularly affected by the housing crisis would strengthen all the other calls for the publication and implementation of this strategy. An element of the crisis that we're facing that isn't talked about as frequently is for people who are living in properties that are not fit for purpose. There's too many cases of damp, cavity wall insulation not being sufficient or being well past its use by date, or old heating systems not being up to standard and being unsustainable, causing issues in homes. For many, if not all of us, assisting people with housing, including housing repairs, is part and parcel of the daily role of a councillor, advocating with housing providers and pressing for repairs and works to be completed as soon as possible. As a representative for the Mayor, I was delighted last month to receive confirmation from the Housing Executive that the business case for the multi-million pound multi-element scheme for housing executive properties in Craigan Heights has finally been approved. This is something that's been worked on for well over 10 years. And it's personal for me as someone who grew up in Craigan Heights and knows only too well the background work that has gone on to push for this on behalf of residents. And I know from the feedback there that residents are welcoming this because they can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel for their homes being brought up to an acceptable standard. But it shouldn't have taken 10 years to get to this point. And I'm aware from speaking to party colleagues who represent DEAs across the city and district that this issue isn't isolated to homes in Craigan that were built over 50 years ago, but spreads right across all DEAs. And we believe that now is the time for all housing associations, including the housing executive, to do a survey of their housing stock and put schemes in place to bring homes to an acceptable and sustainable standard, because it's just as important as building new homes that those who are in social housing at the minute are in safe, sustainable homes so they don't become homeless because of the circumstances. I'm hoping that all parties in this chamber can support the motion and push for social homes across the district to be brought up to an acceptable and sustainable standard for residents.
Alderman Morris, please.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you, Emma, for bringing this motion forward. We all know the value of good quality housing. We all know that there's a housing crisis out there, so it is imperative that people that are in houses maintain them houses and they be maintained so that they don't feel the need to be pursuing houses, taking up houses elsewhere. It's really a valuable piece of work in order for the survey to be done and carried out through all the housing associations and the housing executive. And we are aware, within even my own DAA, that there's housing schemes that needs to be rolled out to multiple areas on the waterside in order to upgrade kitchens and bathrooms and stuff like that, and even maintaining stuff like gutters and things like that there is really important. And if people have good quality homes, then they have a pride in their home, and then they have a pride in their community. So it has a knock-on effect in regards to their own quality of living within their own community. So we welcome this motion and will be very much supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor McGinley for bringing this motion. The SDLP are more than happy to support it. And I suppose when you're looking at the motion, there's three real elements to it, all which are critical, in my opinion. I have been working in council for over 10 years, and I've been working in a busy constituency office for most of that time. So it'll be no surprise to people that housing is a lot of the day-to-day work that I do, and that comes through the constituency office. There is a massive housing crisis across the island. There's no doubt about it. And the only way to tackle it is to build new houses. That's the only solution. It's the only answer. The sooner that's done, the better. There's over 6,000 people across this city and district on the waiting list. And there is no plan that I see that is going to tackle that in any shape, form or fashion over the next 10 years. And that is a crying shame. What I see from my experience is you get people to a certain level of points and then it just stops because there's no house available for them. And you find people when there's a new development about to be allocated, switching and wanting on there, and it becomes a race to the top to see who can get it. It's not fair on people who are waiting, on genuine people who are waiting, because they're just languishing on a waiting list that there is no plan whatsoever to tackle. And I think that being highlighted in the first element of this notice of motion is something that we should be really looking at as a council. I am aware of the scheme at Craigan Heights, and I have spoken to a number of residents there, and I know that they do welcome it. And I know probably not as much as Councillor McGinley. I do know how long they've fought to try and get that prioritised, and they will welcome it. Now, the last part, I just want to make this point, Madam Mayor, please. It's not okay to give someone a house and then not maintain it. I was in a house not that long ago in Ballyarnett, and we done a reading. The social housing provider, I'll say, were telling us that there was no damp in this property. There was woodlouse all over it. We done a reading using a moisture meter, and the reading came in at 27. Now that means nothing to me. It probably means nothing to people who don't know.
I have to ask you to sum up now.
But a moisture reading over 16 is considered damp. It was 27. And the social housing provider was saying there's nothing we can do because this isn't damp. That's not true. They have a responsibility to look after people's homes, and they should be doing it. We fully support that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Okay, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McGinley, for bringing in the motion. And I'm happy to support it. And look, I think that the Department for Communities should be publishing a strategy and a plan that's ambitious and that actually meets the level of housing need in our district and right across the north. And unfortunately, that's not what's happening right now because according to the DFC minister, there's going to be 400 social homes built across the north, which is just unacceptable when we have close to 50,000 applicants. And again, an applicant, as people know, is a family or an individual. So it's more than 80,000 people are trapped on the housing waiting list. And I think that given the scale of the housing crisis, that's just an unacceptable plan. So, if this motion calling for an ambitious housing supply strategy helps to press that discussion forward, I fully welcome it. And I'm sure the people in Craigan too are happy that they will see some renovations done to their housing. We all know the pressures that are on the housing executive, but this is taking a long time. But that will be fully welcomed. And then just on the last part, look, I think that residents in older housing stock across the district have been raising concerns about the state of their houses, and there's all sorts of houses from the lack of efficiency to the state of the brickwork. And I do think a survey is needed because I think a lot of homeowners and renters are actually very worried about the state of the condition of their houses and what's going to happen, and is there government support and what can be done. And we are committed to increasing, as part of our climate action plan, we want to make homes much more efficient at saving energy and saving people money. So I think a survey of across the district, while expansive, is very, very necessary. And I do think that I agree too that it's great to get houses built, but then we also need to make sure that the houses that people are in are fit for families and individuals to be living in. So thank you for the motion.
Okay. Keith?
Thank you very much, Mayor, for allowing me in. And Alderman Morris has spoke on behalf of the party. I will put a declaration of interest in regards to the Housing Council and the Housing Executive. But in regards to it, as I say, there's no problem with the motion put forward by Councillor McGinley, as Alderman Morris has stated. There is the scale of the housing difficulty is massive, as well noted within this area. We're still approximately 45,000 on the list waiting, and one of the major factors there, I suppose, and there is that difficulty, as has been stated. There's 400 social homes there was allocated there effectively through the budget, but it was the scenario that there was the support and people was protected. So there's difficulties in there, and what can be done. The budget didn't meet everything that could be. It didn't stretch far enough, and that was just the allocation as was taken. But we do have a major thing in regards to the housing executive side of things. And again, there are social housing providers who are first class, and there are other, or maybe have room for improvement, we'll put it that way. But the major difficulty the housing executive has is the stock, and the stock continued to be sold off. And there is that scenario where if they could borrow against their stock, they could potentially build again. But that is something that just has not been accepted as yet. But that is the only way that can be done. And that's going to have to be a decision effectively from Westminster to allow that will be brought forward. But it's trying to get that. That's only the housing executive will be able to effectively start to build in a realistic fashion that we can actually provide appropriate housing right across the country. But again, in regards to the motion put forward, we're more than content to support, as Alderman Morris has stated. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Hussain.
Just very briefly to thank Councillor McGinley for the motion. When I started teaching commerce many years ago, we were told that the three needs of humanity were shelter, food, and water. And clearly, we're failing our society on the shelter issue. Calls on the department to publish and implement. Yes, it's okay having a strategy, but that strategy has to be published for examination and implemented. And that's what this motion calls for. That to me is a major element of the proposal, which I totally endorse. the final section, the survey of social housing properties. And as has been rightly pointed out, though the social housing that is available within our community has to be of an acceptable level for people to have to inhabit as they go forward. So thank you to Councillor McGinley for the motion, and I welcome the fact it's across the entire district, and we know it's an issue across all of Northern Ireland, and take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Mayor, and thanks to Councillor McGinley for bringing this motion. There's been many motions in this council regarding housing, and I'm sure every councillor or alderman, a large percentage, or at least a significant percentage of their time, is dealing with their community and people within that community, particularly housing. I do welcome that eventually that it seems to be that Craig Heights, the issues regards the Heights, is going to be tackled. But it's not a unique area. There has been problems in Rimmore and Brandywell, and I suppose right throughout the district. But hopefully that they will get a decent standard of shelter, as Alderman Hussey had said. There's a wide ranging number of issues regarding housing and the lack of housing. I agree with Councillor Harkin that it is going to require an ambitious plan. And we have established a housing task force. Unfortunately, the last meeting had to be cancelled because the DFC said that they couldn't show up, or it didn't suit them. That is not a good sign if that's their intention. We're talking about thousands of people here who don't have a roof over their head, and a lot of children who are sharing with relatives, or in bed and breakfasts, or in hotels. I don't think it's acceptable. I'm not surprised at that attitude, but I don't think it's acceptable that a body tasked with that can just say, it doesn't suit. They need to get their act together. There's one very worrying aspect of all this that I have seen, and it's the manipulation by people on the far right regarding the refugee and immigrant, whereas more and more people are now turning the blame. They're punching down instead of punching up, and they're continuously saying, oh, I'm not getting a house because of the amount of refugees and immigrants, and that's not true in this city. I think that everyone deserves a home, but I think that the situation is being manipulated by malign elements. They promote an ulterior agenda, and I think that needs to be tackled too. I think what we need is there's the housing executive and the staff are doing a tremendous job. It's a job that I wouldn't take for love nor money, and I pay tribute to them. But it can be very frustrating, and it can be very frustrating. I know they're under pressure. I know that they're struggling, but I think that I know I have to sum up here, Mayor, that the only way around this is an adequately funded housing executive allowed to build and bring about an adequate number of houses. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much. Can I bring you back to sum up now?
Mayor, and thank you everyone that's spoken in support of the motion. I think it is a really, really important issue. And as I said earlier, and Christopher will probably kill me for this, but like Craig Heights, it was one of the first things when I came onto council that I was determined that was going to happen. And I nearly cried with happiness when I got the letter from the housing executive to say that the business case had been approved. And as I said earlier, it's not just about Craig Heights, but that's one of the reasons that this motion came forward, was that approval. And there's so many areas across the city and the district that need this work to happen, and it's down to the housing associations. And I do agree that they do incredible work, but they can be doing a wee bit more in terms of their maintenance and in terms of making sure that their stock is up to standard, it's appropriate, and it's sustainable for people. So thank you.
Thank you. So just for clarity, no opposing views, and the motion is unanimous. Thank you. Well done. Okay, moving on to Councillor Harkin, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I take the motion as read, please?
Have a second? Okay, Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Yeah, look, I was out speaking to a resident the other day, and we were talking about Gaza, and she was telling me about that it wasn't necessarily something she would have known a lot about, but in watching what's happening and then seeing the response in Ireland and across the world, she was very moved by it, obviously sickened by the scale of death there and the destruction of Gaza. And she said, look, I care about this. I care about the people of Gaza, even though they're very far away from us. And she said that this is not just about us caring for them, this is about the future of humanity. And I do think that people around the globe are looking at what's happening in Gaza and seeing what is becoming acceptable for the global powers and wondering if this is going to become normalized. And the alarming thing that's happening right now is that global arms sales are at an all-time high. If you look at it's 1,970 billion pounds was spent in this year on arms sales, and there is a real arms race happening right across the world. And Gaza is part of that, and the arming of Israel is very much part of that. But it's not just there; it's the threat of regional war that Israel might set off because of what it's doing in the Middle East. And there's other areas as well of conflict, obviously Ukraine and Russia. British arms sales have rocketed again. There's been another massive increase in British arms sales, and Britain is very much at the centre of the arms industry, fueling the arms industry, fueling conflicts around the world, arming Israel. And so I think that this is, we are living in very, very dangerous times. And I think that this is why the campaign to try and stop the genocide in Gaza has been so important, because this is about humanity rejecting what world leaders are prepared to do over their foreign policy and whatever their interests are. So I think that we're in a period right now when we can't get proper funding for our health service, when we can't get proper funding for our play parks, when we can't get proper funding for dealing with weeds, when we can't get proper funding to make sure our estates are places that people deserve to live in, and we can't get proper funding to fix our roads, we can't get investment for rail. And then we look at the scale of military spending. It clearly means that government priorities are misplaced from what the vast majority of people would like to see, and from what vested interests who benefit from the arms industry are prepared to promote. And so it's worrying that Rishi Sunak, even with the massive increase, with the massive increase in arms spending by the British government, wants more of the budget to go to that. And I think in terms of the North, I think that we have to be vigilant that the executive, with its meetings with Joe Kennedy, who is a promoter of Raytheon, who this city has a history with, that the attempts to secure inward investment doesn't involve bringing companies that are involved in the arms trade, that are involved in manufacturing of any products that can be used in Gaza or in any other conflicts around the world. So that the motion really is about trying to get clarification from the Stormont executive and also shining a light on what the British government is doing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I haven't seen anybody else indicating to speak. So, Alderman Morris.
Thanks very much, Mayor, for letting me in. The security and defence industry is very important to Northern Ireland's economy. It increasingly doesn't just cover the traditional aerospace and manufacturing sectors, but cybersecurity and other areas can't be completely divorced from national security, and investment in these sectors provide well-paid jobs for people living in Northern Ireland. We see people before profit are calling on the UK government to invest in play parks, which isn't their responsibility, nor the responsibility of Parliament. It's a responsibility of this council. And so therefore we have to take full responsibility for the failure of investment in the play parks. Recently, I brought up at the last meeting about the derelict provision within Drumahoe. We see Ross Downey Park sitting with no play equipment for the last few years. And I'm sure we could mention a whole lot of play parks within our own district. So perhaps maybe if we concentrated more on our own core responsibility, including the play parks, and less than trying to be like some kind of pound shop version of the United Nations, then we would get on a lot further. I just think, you know, we need to concentrate on things we can deliver within this council, and therefore we won't be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Good Chair. Chair, they're saying that the first casualty of war is truth, and you know most wars are based on lies, you know, falsehoods, and people answer that call, and most of the people that answer that call, the vast majority are doing it for the right reasons. But there's no honesty. If there's no honesty in a war situation, then there's no hope of ending that particular war. I think that the current today the aims of war is not about getting a solution to something. It's about sustaining a war, because you know the longer a war continues, the bigger the profits for arms manufacturing, and particularly the US. Not there's more wars now than any time in a generation, and you know there's nothing moral about war. You know, we see a situation where Britain is currently supplying Israel, despite Israel supplying exercise missiles to Argentina during the Malvinas War, despite Zionism having bombed British Officers Club in Jerusalem in 1947, killing 17 British soldiers, despite Zionism bombing the King David Hotel, killing 90 people. Zionism killed dozens of British soldiers by bombing the USS Liberty. The arms trade is it's almost like drug dealing. There's no honor. It's about greed. It's about profit. And I think, you know, we were told that wars, you know, it's to be the war to end all wars, and that we learned by this. But the ugly reality is that we continue to do it over and over and again. I think that if anybody needed an example of how we haven't learnt anything about wars, I think we just need to go back maybe 6 or 7 months ago, when in the Canadian Parliament, where a Nazi, a real life Nazi Waffen SS mass murderer, Anka, was given, he was part of a notorious unit that responsible for crimes against humanity during the Holocaust, and he was given during a visit of Zelensky, who led the standing ovation, him and Trudeau. They introduced him as a war hero, and he got a standing ovation by hundreds, down to every single male and female MP was given a standing ovation. They are a real life Waffen SS officer. How does that happen? I've heard stories in here from Alderman Hussey about machine gunners gunning down Nazis and that, but here we are. If that doesn't strike a chord with people, or say how in this day and age does that happen, probably most people haven't even heard about that, because
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly.
but we haven't learnt anything from war. So that money could be better spent saving lives and health equipment and hospitals, rather than being profits going to arms manufacturers. Thanks for your indulgence, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor McGinley.
Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Harkin for bringing this motion forward. Sinn Féin are in support of the motion and have no issue at all with a letter being sent to the First Minister, Deputy First Minister and the Economy Minister to seek clarity and assurances in relation to the content of meetings about onward investment. Our support for the Palestinian people has been ongoing from long before the 7th of October, and we've been consistent in calling for an end to the heartbreaking current genocide that's been inflicted on the Palestinian people, with the same consistency that we've demonstrated and shown solidarity with the Palestinian people for decades, as they faced numerous horrific onslaughts by the Zionist Israeli occupation forces. We agree that any increase of spending by the British government on military defence and arms is wrong, particularly in a time when Tory austerity has been cutting away funding to our vital services right across the public service. It'll come as no surprise to anybody in this chamber that we believe that decisions in relation to investment of resources on this island should be made on this island by those who are elected here, not by the Tories or even Labour in London. That being said, we agree that rather than directing funding towards arms sales or defence and military spending, the funds should be directed towards public services, and on that basis we'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Harkin for bringing the motion. The SDLP are happy to support the motion as well. Arms industry companies who profit from apartheid, legal occupation, or the genocide in Gaza is completely wrong, and we disagree with it. Councillor Donnelly referred to the arms industry as being about two things, greed and profit, and I agree, but would add one more item onto that. It's not only about greed and profit. The arms industry is about killing people. That's just the reality of it. It's about killing people. As mad as this may seem, I wish there was no arms industry, because then there would be no killing people, particularly innocent people that are being killed in Gaza right now. And they're being killed in Gaza right now by weapons or components of weapons which are being supplied and paid for by the American administration and the British administration. And my party's thoughts around that are very, very clear, and I've made them several times in this chamber. I note the reference in the notice of motion around the former Tory Prime Minister, that should say, but former Tory Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his proposals, but I genuinely don't believe that that's something that we need to be worrying about right now. As by the time this motion is actioned, I would imagine that there'll be a new Prime Minister. But I do think it's important that we keep an eye on what the incoming British government are doing. I agree there absolutely. And whatever we can do to make sure that the Labour Party, if they are in government in the UK, are kept to their Labour views, we should be doing. Absolutely. I have no issue with that either. But I have heard, so see around the letter part, no issue with that whatsoever. Find out what the meetings were about. But I have heard on a number of occasions now, Councillor Harkin in particular, talking about the arms industry and linking it directly to US investment. And I think there's a bit of scaremongering going on here. The SDLP are not aware of any plans to have any arms industries setting up business in this part of Ireland. I think that needs to be made absolutely clear, because it was referenced at an event that I was at last night, and it was almost referenced as if they were going to be setting up in the morning. And that's not true. Find out what the meetings were about. Find out what the discussions with Joe Kennedy III are about. But let's tell the truth. This is a scoping exercise as we see it. This is something that we want to know. And unless Councillor Harkin knows something that the rest of us don't, I think he needs to make sure that the public are not running around thinking that, for example, Raytheon or any other company is going to be setting up across there in Strabane, because that is very, very dangerous. But in relation to the notice of motion, we have no qualms whatsoever. We're happy to support it and find out what's going on. But we want to make sure that that message is coming out of this council, that we are unaware and we do not expect at this stage, until we get communication from the First and Deputy First Minister, that there's going to be any arms company setting up in this district, because we certainly would not be accepting it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Barr.
You, Mayor, just briefly. Thanks to Councillor Harkin for bringing the motion. The motion to me is a no-brainer. The motion anyone with any moral fibre will support. To spend billions on promoting and profiting from weapons of death, and that same money could be spent on the betterment and saving of lives, is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harkin, can I bring you to sum up?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody who spoke in favour of the motion. And look, when Raytheon came to Derry, I think it surprised a lot of people. People said it would have nothing to do with the arms trade, and that was found out to be not true. And then there was a campaign that people supported for Raytheon not to be here, because people didn't want to be complicit in whatever Raytheon was doing in the Middle East and elsewhere. And there are companies here who are making arms that are being used in Israel or being used in Gaza right now that are killing people. Not necessarily in our district, but here in the north of Ireland, that is true. They are manufacturing weapons that are killing children in Gaza, killing and blowing up hospitals, blowing up schools. And there are also, quite a few companies here in the north, and including in our district, who are providing not necessarily weaponry, but are providing machines that are involved in the Gaza genocide and that are involved in apartheid. That's already here, right? And those are people's jobs. And in some of those plants, workers are not paid very well. They don't have a trade union. And I've been speaking to those workers. I think a lot of the, those plants can all be repurposed to do something productive instead of producing weapons that kill people. And I think that would, the workers that work on those plants, I think they would like to see that. There are concerns as well because Joe Kennedy, somebody who has been a promoter of certain companies. There's a discussion about what's happening with in Kilkeel with an investment there that Joe Kennedy announced with an organisation that is partnered with RTX, which is Raytheon. So I think that this is a discussion that we need to understand. I think very few people in the north of Ireland would want to be having any kind of companies coming into their district that were actively involved right now in the Gaza genocide, but more broadly involved in producing things that are going to do harm to people around the world.
Please come up. Thank you, members. Okay, so we do have opposing views. Can I ask show of hands those who are voting against this motion? Okay. Okay, those who are voting for the motion. Okay. Any abstentions? No, thank you very much. So we have 29 for and 5 against. The motion passes. Okay, moving on to Councillor Leonard Tumo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll just wait for the motion to go up on the board, please.
Okay, move on.
Before I speak to this motion, I just want to bring to members' attention, just wanted to amend or delete the word quarterly there from the, you see a line there says, all about regular quarterly meetings. I'm just taking out the word quarterly. Can I take the motion has been read, please?
Seconding that. Okay.
Members, the aim of my motion that I'm speaking to today is to ensure that as a council we can be aware as much as possible of information pertaining to premises in our council area that provide sleeping accommodation for students, tourists, visitors and citizens who dwell in houses of multiple occupation, and ensuring that the providers of the designated sleeping accommodation are complying with legislative requirements. The term designated is a legal term in fire service legislation that refers to all types of non-domestic premises. Regrettably, statistics continue to show that people are most at risk from fire when they are sleeping. The increasing number of students, tourists and visitors to our city and district is very welcome, and we should be doing what we can to ensure that they are as safe as possible from this risk. I am therefore proposing the Council establish an initial meeting with Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service, tourist boards across the island and the House of Multiple Occupation Unit at Belfast City Council to share information with regard current types and numbers and types of sleeping accommodation in the city and district, and receive assurance about compliance with legislative requirements. This should be followed by regular meetings to share information on new designated sleeping accommodation premises that may become available. As we are all aware, legislation can be complicated, and with respect, members, the second part of my motion is that I'm proposing that Council, in conjunction with partners as necessary, provide to councillors familiarisation on designated sleeping premises legislative requirements under the Fire Service Order 2006, Fire Service Regulations 2010, and Housing Multi-Occupation Order 2016, and any associated respective council legislative requirements, including the imminent private tenancies regulations 2024. For my God, fire. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mooney?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Councillor Leonard for bringing this motion. I think everybody in this chamber probably has some experience or knowledge of the devastation of what a house fire can do to families and to local communities. Obviously, the devastation that a house fire can wreak is only known to us. But I think Councillor Leonard in this motion brings a very good issue and raises a very good issue, namely for accommodation providers being in compliance with the various fire protection and prevention regulations that are currently in operation within our jurisdiction. And we in the SDLP would fully support his request for meetings of the various stakeholders outlined in his second paragraph, and for the meetings to go ahead. And obviously, we would also agree for the meetings for members to meet with the fire service and for updates on the various legislations, because obviously sometime we could be contacted by local residents or about these things, and the more knowledge we have as members to partake and to give to our local constituents, the better. So thank you, Councillor Leonard. That's another example of a fine practical motion for members. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy?
Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Leonard for bringing forward this motion. I have discussed the motion with Councillor Leonard prior to it being brought forward. As somebody who works within the homeless sector in this city, I have seen firsthand some of the properties where we have seen exposed wiring, blocked fire escapes, no smoke alarms within properties. And coming from a homeless perspective, some of these people are very, very vulnerable and don't have the voice to speak up for themselves. So it's very, very important that any accommodation that they are being put into is absolutely fit for purpose. Also, as a mother of a student, in terms of student accommodation, you want to know that any accommodation that your child is away at university in is absolutely safe for them to be living in, and you don't want to hear the devastation of a fire or anything else in terms of young people. So I'm more than happy to support this proposal. I think it's actually a really good proposal to try and do something practically about the issues that we have seen come to light in the city over the last number of years, in terms of particularly around HMOs. So I think that it's really important that we support this motion and see practical steps being taken forward in terms of making sure that properties are up to standard for very vulnerable people to be living within them. So thank you again to Councillor Leonard for bringing this forward.
Okay, moving on to Alderman Carrigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for letting me in, and do thank Councillor Leonard for bringing forward the motion. As has been said by others there, a good practical motion to be brought forward, and we're more than content to support it. As I say, there's no difficulty in regards to going forward and bringing this forward and having these initial meetings. I do apologise. I know there was meetings had with individuals in regards to the University of Ulster and in regards to student expansion, and I didn't know whether the like of officers from McGee would have been a benefit of that meeting. But as I say, I'm not intending to put forward an amendment to it. I'm content with that initial meeting, and if there's anyone else, and again, even as Councillor Duffy has mentioned in regards to the homelessness and in regards to the work that the Housing Executive does, and there's another potential, and I will declare an interest in that. But as I more than content with an initial meeting with providers as listed, and maybe we can after that decide there's maybe others that can be of benefit to be in those talks, but we're content to support Councillor Leonard's proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And next to Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Leonard, for bringing this forward. It is very important, and the safety of anybody in their home, rented or owned, is primary. I do, however, see a problem with this, and it's something that I've encountered a number of times. It's actually landlords who are not registered, are not on the landlord registration scheme. So if they're not registered, they're irresponsible. It's a legal requirement. If they're irresponsible, they're not doing these things that they should be initially. So they're putting people at risk of, this is something that really, really concerns me because, and I would like it noted that if they're not registered on the landlord registration scheme, obviously nobody knows who they are, what they're doing, how they're carrying out their business, how they're treating their tenants. I'll also register interest in that. And if these people are being treated fairly, and I've dealt with a number of people who, have been made homeless. When you say who your landlord is, have you got a contract, who are you paying? They don't hardly know anything. They know nothing about them. And they're that desperate, they haven't gone down that route for fear of being made homeless, unfortunately. So this is another aspect of that we need to take on board, is how do we identify missing landlords or landlords who are not registered when we rightly know that the premises are being rented out, whether to be students, tourists or individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Leonard for bringing in this motion. It's a very good proposal, and I think it's important given the discussions we've been having about housing across the district. And at the last temporary accommodation task force meeting, that this was actually discussed, and the fire service were very, very eager for something like this to happen. So I think that this will be welcomed by everybody involved in the task force, and especially by the fire service. And obviously their concern is that there's lots of properties that are where there appears to be a change of use, and they have no idea what many of these properties look like, how many people are in them, whether the proper fire safety standards are being upheld. And they wanted a means of finding all that information out. And I think that this will, the coordination involved in here with different entities and organisations with responsibility, I think will help advance that. I think we're in a situation where there's clearly some deregulation, some on-regulation of different properties, a lot of property pressures and changes to properties, change in use. And we have to be on top of this because we do, as others have said, have to put the safety of our residents first and foremost. And, if there's practices being carried out by landlords, we have to make sure that that gets challenged and where the proper requirements for safety are upheld in all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Leonard to sum up. Okay, Councillor Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. Very, very briefly, I thank Councillor Leonard for the motion. Makes a lot of sense. Just a quick query with regard to the last paragraph, councillors' familiarisation. Would Councillor Leonard agree that that is perhaps on two levels? There's the general familiarisation for the general body of councillors, but there would also be a need for deeper familiarisation for those members of the planning committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Want to respond and sum up, please?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you to colleagues right across the chamber. I'm very grateful for your support in this motion. I can't emphasise enough how important it is that everyone takes steps to prevent fire in their own homes, and also as elected representatives, as council officers, how important it is that we promote fire safety throughout the council district. A lot of good points made by the speakers, and I'll just take a couple of minutes, if I may, Mayor, just to address a couple of them. Councillor Cusack, yeah, good point, and touched on by Councillor Harkin as well about landlords. New regulations coming in September, smoke, heat and carbon monoxide alarms for private tenancy regulations, alluded to it when I was speaking earlier. That will put some onus on landlords to provide heat, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. And if they don't comply, it'll be up to council to follow that up. Councillor Kerrigan, good point about McGee. Yeah, we've established links with McGee, and we can build on that cooperation with partners through this motion. And Councillor Rossi, yeah, we can go as deep as is necessary into legislation, and that will be very helpful to members of the Planning Committee. And about sharing information even within the council, for example, a change of use premises goes through planning from a domestic home to a HMO. The fire service may never learn about that premises, and this will be an opportunity to share that information. So once again, thank you very much for your support in this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I haven't had any dissenting voices on this, so can I take it that the motion is unanimous? Thank you very much, members. Okay, so the next agenda item, that's the end of motions. Next agenda item is open for information only, so unless anyone has anything they want to raise. Okay, so I think this is a record set. Thank you very, very much for giving me a very easy time on my first year motion. Thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.